Okay.
And what we'll do, we'll just go ahead and wing it, but we won't tell anybody that we're winging it, and we'll look like we're creating. Oh wait, we're live.
Yeah. Isn't that what we're known for? Is just winging it?
We'd like to welcome you to the Trampled Underfoot podcast show, and your hosts are the Mark on the west and the E on the east. Welcome.
Yeah.
That's shorthand for Mark Lindsay and Eloy Escajado. Hello, everyone.
Oh man, it's been a weird week. See, Eloy and I each behind the scenes try to come up with something, a couple of topics to talk about, and this, that, and the other. But we don't discuss them with one another because we want that spontaneous, we want that genuine reaction, you know,
Yeah.
from one another. And if we've already discussed it, well, there goes the spontaneity and there goes the genuine reaction. So, what I do is about a half hour before we come in here and, hey, how's it going? And this, that, and the other. And then Eloy hits the button and we start broadcasting. As I come in and I start looking for stuff. And I have a few ideas in my head that I want to go look for. And um, nothing, nothing. So it just, you know, I couldn't find anything. This is a boring week in music history. It's a boring week in movie history, television history. But I did find one little ironic twist. And this is true. You can look it up, backstop me on this. As we record this, it's April 18th, 2023. On April 18th, 1930, the BBC went on the air on the radio and said, there is no news. And that's it. Their newscast was that. There is no news. Here's some music. So I don't know what it is about this week of April, but there's nothing going on
In the past.
in the past and in the present. There's not a whole hell of a lot going on. I mean, there's things to argue with people about. There always will be. But yeah, I mean, when you're talking about culture in the art world, nothing really this week. When you're talking about music history, nothing really this week. Nothing in TV, nothing in movies. It just, you know, nothing.
But wait a second. We must be living in two different dimensions at parallel,
How so?
because there's a ton of crap that's been happening on the news.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. There's a lot to argue about. But as far as culturally is concerned, meh. Yeah, there's a lot going on in
I don't know,
current
my friend.
events. There's a lot going on in current events. There's a lot to argue about. There's a lot to discuss there. But I'm talking about culture-wise.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is about this week, but it just.
Okay, I'd see because there's all sorts of stuff happening culture wise right now currently, like great and terrible things according to the news. There, I mean, I don't even want to bring them up because they're.
Yeah.
I mean, but you can't. I don't know that you can. I could rattle off a long list of stuff that just shot out the pipes. This.
Yes, there are, and again, yes, I agree with that. There are stories out there about things that are happening kind of on, I guess you would say, on the cultural front.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the arts, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
There's not really a whole lot going on. And I don't know, I've been noticing this for a while. We constantly lament.
I love how this episode, if we're starting, there's nothing going on. Go ahead.
Well, we constantly lament that today's music is crap. And most movies today are kind of meh. And who watches TV anymore? Well, you can watch on streaming services and this, that, and the other. So, on the cultural front, we're talking about the arts, music, um, film, even, painting or sculpture or what have you. Pick your own art. Is there anything really happening in the last year, in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years? I mean, I can't think of, I don't know, Martin Scorsese says that today's film isn't really film. It's like going to the amusement park and getting on a thrill ride. It's going to the movies is more like going to a theme park. And I kind of agree with him on that score. Have we kind of, I don't know, have we lost our way?
When you do these things, when you go
What?
down when you do these things,
Mm-hmm.
where you leave a broad door open,
Well,
and it's what is the word? What's the word? It's subjective.
it's very subjective. That's why I'm asking your opinion. I'll give you an example. You didn't quite badger me, but you suggested for a few years that I check out the Truman Show, and so I did, and I liked it. I liked it a lot. I've watched it again since. Can you think of a film that's come out in the last 5 years that's that good?
As the Truman Show,
Yeah, I can't.
there's too much though.
Yeah, you're right. I haven't seen every movie that's come out. I mean, I've barely seen a few, a handful maybe. But I can't think that was a damn good movie. It was well acted, it was well done, it was well written, it was well thought out. I can't think of a movie to rival it in the past 10 years. There's lots of spectacle. There's lots of CGI animation. There's lots of explosions and stuff like that. There's plenty of entertainment. But I mean, I don't know. So I'm wondering, has Hollywood jumped the shark? I guess is what I'm wondering.
I mean, I can't say so. I'm in a situation where I can't say anything because it's all gonna lead to an unpacking of all sorts of things down different roads
That's fine.
that we might not be able to. So I guess what I'll say is too much for me to what can I point? Okay, so we've talked about it before.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, I've been thinking a lot of things like, well, not directly, but now that you're bringing this up, or I'm trying to find a path in
Mm-hmm.
somehow. I'm looking. I'm like Pac-Man going trying to find a way. I'm thinking about all those quick TikTok videos.
Yeah.
And how people consume those, and there's not a lot of information.
Right.
It's a quick snippet, and then it moves to the next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And I've caught myself falling into that cycle,
Mm-hmm.
just watching and swiping, and I'm actively aware that I'm doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, this is destroying society as I'm swiping. As I'm constantly swiping, and I'm thinking to myself, this is the ruin of our, and yet I'm participating in it.
Yeah.
And so the quick start end of a 30-second or less snippet, then next to the next one with little munchable sized little bits of entertainment or media or whatever. Does it does it represent a decline? Is it them? Is it the companies doing it to keep people entertained, and it represents them pushing it, like, I don't know, beer or cigarette, and beer's another one, beer or cigarettes or this or that, to the consumer at large, and they just get hooked on a trend? Or is it that our concentration is becoming less and less focused and extended? And then, so I'm thinking that, and then as for
Yeah.
Hollywood, I'm thinking they've spent over 100 years producing films and stuff that have really enriched a lot of culture and whatnot.
Right.
But along with that, they've also produced, um, they can't help but influence
Mm-hmm.
ideas, and ideas become like, SNL
Mm-hmm.
for decades. They'll have skits that are funny
Mm-hmm.
using pivot points of concepts that's intended to say, isn't this true? Like, here's the
Satire, yes.
no, but yes, it is, but I'm getting at a specific thing. So, okay, so in a joke, and I don't know the specific makeup of it, but there's pieces to a joke in order to hook you and throw you in, and then throw that contradiction,
Mm-hmm.
that makes the humor happen.
Right.
For decades, they've done those jokes at the public at large, and the public at large is viewing it, and but they insinuate ideas that aren't necessarily true, that are biased to one, let's say, political alliance or another, at the expense of another group. And because it's cultural and comedy and young kids and so on, it becomes its self-fulfilling prophecy, where people start to think that, oh, this set of ideas, that's bad, that's good, and it's fun to make fun of that,
Right.
without thinking it actually through.
I will agree with that. But I think that's kind of the purpose of satire is basically to explode your view of something and kind of lay it out there. If you choose to laugh at it, you'll laugh at it. If you just examine a little bit deeper and go, whoa, wait a minute, then that's your reaction to it. But you said something more profound than I think you understand.
I
And
beg to differ with that one.
that you're talking about people doing the TikTok thing, just those 30-second little brief entertaining clips.
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of dovetails in with my point when I asked, has Hollywood jumped the shark? Yeah, they're still making the movies. Yeah, they're still putting them out there. But people are finding their own entertainment, and they're making their own entertainment. And I'm wondering, I'm wondering about cause and effect. Are people into the 30-second clips on TikTok because there's nothing else, or because they prefer this? I guess that's the same thing. Do they prefer this because they don't think there's nothing else? Or see, it all comes back to, why are we so addicted to things like that? Why aren't we doing the feature films, going to the theaters anymore? I mean, they still are, but not nearly in the numbers they were before.
No.
Even within the Marvel universe, they're not being released to the theaters. They're all streaming now. I mean, there's one or two a year, but there's a ton of it on Netflix and Hulu and all this other good stuff. It's almost become, instead of the big cinematic masterpieces that they tried to make them, it's down to a monthly series. we've got 6 episodes of this character, and now we've got 7 episodes of that character, and we're going to binge watch all of that to make our way through that universe that much faster, when you had to wait a year, maybe 2, before the next episode came out. Has our attention span shrunk, or are we making it shrink because there's nothing else really to watch? See, I kind of see the TikTok, and the same thing with YouTube Shorts. I kind of see that as people making their own entertainment. It's great to watch a Hollywood actor, but I want to see that dude fall down in his backyard, you know?
Yeah. I was sort of going to the point of the environment around, or the industries around us,
Mm-hmm.
molding our world, sort of like that. I was going in that direction.
And I'm going to come around to that now by saying that, do you think people are getting tired of that as well? And that's another reason why television ratings continue to plummet.
No,
Because people are getting tired of that manipulation. Maybe folks are starting to see it, and they don't want to watch Saturday Night Live anymore. I'd rather go on TikTok.
No, I think, well, I don't know fully. It's my opinion, but I think that we are. So, okay. To be brutal, how can you convince an idiot, a space case, of a factoid, when they're just simply not capable of seeing the forest for the trees when it comes to a specific whatever? Just, I'm being general. Is it?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is you can't. But
Okay,
that's why. But that's why I'm wondering if that's why people are turning further away from television now, is because they can see that manipulation and they don't want to take part.
I'm trying to make a point with that.
Oh,
That
okay.
was just an introduction to the thing.
Oh,
But
okay.
but
Gotcha.
your answer is that you really can't. I mean, that we know of, in a general sense, you would lean towards we can't.
Not really, no, because people
Okay.
are going to believe what they believe. You know.
Okay, I think that that's true too. There may be cases. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in the world,
Yeah.
and in the information that's laid on the table in front of people. I haven't, to be general, so that we don't get into the weeds with it. And I have in the past, but it's been more acute recently. And it goes to what you say: are people starting to get aware, become awareness in it? This is a very complicated thing without hitting the target and revealing the. But I don't believe that people are becoming aware. I believe some people are becoming aware. I don't know what the numbers might be, but the general consensus population believes in a world that we all believed roughly when we were young, concerning authority and structures and the normal, stable operation of the world around us. Anyways, so I've found inconsistencies.
Oh yeah, big time.
Within inconsistencies. So what I mean by that is, I have found a set of ideas that I'm partial to, and people propagating these ideas. And then, due to my being so damn nosy, discovering that said the propagators of the ideas are propagating things, plus adding more damage and confusion in a subtle way, maybe without them knowing. I don't know that part, or them knowing, but to the point where they're feeding information, thinking they're doing a good thing, but they're feeding wrong information, and people are receiving said information, and it's cycling, creating this sort of like cyclical, perpetual bullcrap rotation.
Mhm.
And I think so. What I'm getting at to so you have media putting out things, Hollywood, this and that, and within that you have notions like I was mentioning before with Saturday Night Live, where there are
Mhm.
little in-house jokes concerning politics and this and that,
Sure.
and it's meant to say, oh, ha ha ha, this particular group of people, and it makes it cool to the public at large to think, oh, that group of people, but that's not necessarily true.
Mhm.
Like the assumptions made for the joke, but it
Right.
serves as a so it serves as a joke, but
Mhm.
it's also serving as a manipulation for the
Right.
public at large to consume an idea in the sense of pop culture that becomes the norm through that joke. It's a manipulation tactic. So basically, what I'm getting at is that there's a lot of lies,
Sure.
and it gets compounded up on itself. And what we have is a world spider's web of inconsistencies here and there and this and that, to the point where um it's frenzied. So media, just to, I guess, return to home base. So media is now more accessible minute by minute, like you were saying. I think that that's more convenient, and whether we have
Right.
fondness for the movies and this and that, I don't think that we would give it up for what we got.
Yeah, I agree with that last part. That I don't think we would give up the movies for what we have now. But like,
No,
go
the other
back.
way around, that we would give up what we have now to return to just pure movies, is what I was saying.
Oh, okay. No, you're right. No, I don't think we would give up what we have now because
Yeah.
I think this is an escape. I think this is an escape. Now, let's just take us, you and me, for example. Okay, we do this every Tuesday night. We don't have huge numbers. We're not attracting huge volumes of people here, and that's fine. We both are fine with that.
Mhm.
But what we do have here is people who they have chosen to watch us and listen to what we have to say
Instead of Kim
over
Kardashian.
over whatever's on television right now. So it's a small, I mean, minute number. But we're not the only people who are live right now on YouTube. We're not the only people who are live on any of the social media platforms. There are people TikToking right now, and they've got tons of viewers. So there are millions of people who are not consuming that media that you and I are talking about right now. And I'm wondering if this is just kind of a symptom, if this is just kind of uh, maybe a little bit of evidence that people are tired of that it worked okay when that was the only thing there. But now there are millions of options out there. I don't have to sit and watch those guys be buffoons on television. I mean, we've heard a lot about pushback against some of this stuff that's being forced, down our throats by Hollywood and the media, be it TV, radio, what have you. There is a
What a
lot of
choice!
there is
What
a
a
lot
choice!
of backlash in a lot of that. And I think that the popularity of these social media platforms are kind of evidence of that. That people don't, it's not like when you and I were kids. There were three channels, pick one. And that's it. Those were your entertainment choices. That or you went in the room and played with your toys again. Now there's so many options out there.
Yeah,
And
it's
if you can't find anything on, you pop on the video game, put on your headset and go, you know, gaming with your buddies
yeah.
wherever.
There's plenty of options for. So all in all,
Hmm.
so just because we see or understand something or arrive
Hmm.
at some sort of aha moment, some sort of eureka moment or something on any given topic, and we see the forest for the trees.
Right.
We, at the end of the day, or to a certain degree, or to a great degree, actually very specifically, are individual people. So I'll say what I'm getting at. So it's kind of like what we've talked about before. We have all these things happening. And you've alluded to this, well, very directly in the past, in certain conversations. But it's a flux. So here it is. If tomorrow there's a meteorite coming, or not tomorrow, in a week from now, and like, devastation wise, what difference does it make if Joey on 7th and Sepulveda knows that information or doesn't? At the end of the day, people do have this itching curiosity, but
sure.
Likewise, I'll say it another way. What if, or not even what if, we have the long lens of history. Let's say you and I and all of us were back in Roman times. At the end of the Roman Empire, where everything was just going to go to crap. And we got news on the tablet or whatever, or whatever. Just because one person or a group of people or a town knows the direction that the wind is blowing, either way, the trees are going to blow or fall. The rivers are going to overturn. When it comes to big picture items.
Yeah.
Last thing I'll say about that and see what you think. On the news and on these, just the internet, when they say, and we've talked about this specifically, and now I'm giving you the affirmation of your sort of thinking, even though I flux back and forth, because at the same time, we're human. We want to know this and that.
Sure.
At the end of the day, we hear about, because aliens, and did you hear, or the balloon, the Chinese balloon, or the this or that. Okay. Or just any number of things that are like huge things. Does Charlie over down at the, I don't know, the coffee emporium and chocolate malt festival, joint shop, if he acquires that information, either way, is he going to stop the invasion of the body snatchers? Is he going to? No, nobody's going to do jack squat. At best, the government will send out some F-15s, some this and that. But so what I'm getting at is that we're along for the ride.
Yes, we are.
And to reemphasize, imagine being back during the Roman Empire or this or that. The people there, people want to know what's going on around them, but at the same time, how much. So that said, on the flip side of that last part, you know how they always say that there's an elite group of people that are controlling or pulling the strings. You know how they always say that, and it's not been today. It's been, it's been a thing.
Yeah.
And they name different groups.
Yeah.
So maybe last year they pick a religious group, let's say. Or another time they'll pick a group of people according to whatever specifics they may have. And it's always bouncing around, or multiple ones at the same time. And it's them. It's because of them that the world is.
And they're all in cahoots together. Yeah.
And yeah, you can build a pyramid into the cahoots. Okay. So, to a degree, to a degree, if that's the case, then we would be the equivalent of what? If that were the case, what would we, the citizens at large, be the equivalent of?
Well, you just
To
named a
them,
big club, and we ain't in it. So we're just regular mopes hoping to get 50,000 miles out of a set of tires.
to
You know?
them, what are we?
Oh, nothing. We're either the consumer or no, we're the consumer. Basically, that's it. We're a number. We're nothing.
Right.
You know.
If that's the case of the thing. Now,
Hmm.
many people make the case for that being the case with certain groups, like I mentioned before.
Sure.
Other people use the financial this and that. We do know that the financial, let's not say it like that. We do know that there's people that have lots of cash to spare,
Oh, sure. Economic class does matter. Yeah.
and then if they have an idea, they
Hmm.
work it so there's a bunch of that. But would you necessarily call it? I mean, they could affect government, they could affect money and whatnot, but
Sure.
at the end of the day, that I know that, let's say I know that for a fact. Like we talked about this one time concerning aliens or something, I forget, but we had a long discussion.
Hmm.
And you said, well, okay, and now what? No, what was it? Oh, that the Earth, the flat. So if you
The
discover that the Earth is flat, and then you said, and now what?
now what? What's next? What do we
Right,
do now?
right. Well, that was a little different because if it's something provable like that, where
Hmm.
our understanding of the geometry of the situation is different,
Hmm.
that's a mind blowing thing. But like we've been led to believe in the seedy, dark crevices of society across time, in books and media and whatnot, concerning these mysterious groups or organizations or religious things,
Hmm.
or due to whatever variation on Earth you can possibly imagine. And so it's in the popular culture or subculture.
Sure.
There's movies made about it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like something, but something profound like, oh, we live inside an egg, let's say.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just mind blowing. But anyways, long story short, um, there is that level of we're along for the ride.
Yeah. We are. That's been my attitude for a long time, that we are basically along for the ride. And when I say, and I know sometimes that infuriates you when I say, okay, now what?
Mm.
What I'm trying to ask is, let's say that it's true 100%. Let's say the earth is flat. Does that really change anything? Yes, it's going to blow our minds, you know,
Yeah, but in that case, it's different.
but does it really change anything? I mean,
Yeah.
our days are still 24 hours long, 23 and some change. Um, you're still going to get up in the morning. You're still going to go to work or not, as the case may be. You're still going to walk the dog or not, as the case may be. Our day to day life isn't really impacted. So when we get that information, what do we do with it? What do we do next? Now what? What happens next?
Okay, so there's two things.
Hmm.
A conspiracy. Two things.
Hmm.
First, the subtle thing, and then directly what you're saying. This is in my mind what I think. It doesn't mean
Okay,
that it's
and that's
true
fine.
or
And that's what we're talking about is our opinions.
um, it's just what I consider. Um, with wiggle room that I could be completely freaking wrong.
Yeah,
Um, we have conspiracies throughout our lifetime.
sure.
We grew up on mysteries and
Hmm.
radio and just endless stuff. And there's always a bad guy sinister behind the curtain.
Hmm.
So let's say tomorrow we find out for a matter of fact it was that group, that one group. That's it. It was that group. I mean, it's a fact.
Hmm.
I could tell you exactly what would happen without a single shred of doubt.
What's that?
Nothing will happen.
Exactly.
And the reason nothing will happen, and the reason I know that, it's because it's already happened multiple times, but people are unwilling to look at information.
Hmm.
And I can tell you the specifics, but I'm not going to do that because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I could lay it out and show that who's behind a certain event
Well, and
as one example. And yet, and it's been published, but it's also been suppressed and so on and so forth. And yet, across the world, people are happy to press the next button on TikTok
Yeah.
and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
So I already can tell you what would happen. Now, with that said, if it's something as earth-shattering as, so we're already used to the fact that there's people pulling the strings. This is what I'm getting at. We're
Okay.
already programmed to know that we're
Mm-hmm.
helpless to a great degree.
Mm-hmm.
And this has been programmed into us, whether it's a slow progression due to, hey, let's just tell them this through the media, and it's
Mm-hmm.
a snowball thing, or whether it's a big plan. I don't know. But we've been, even if we haven't been programmed, for all intensive purposes, we do have a sense of having a limited
Mm-hmm.
control over the
Yeah.
great shaking events of of the day. As far as something like what you like, the Earth is being flat, or let's just leave that to the side. Something just as what if we found out tomorrow that one religion above all the others, pick your whichever one,
Mm-hmm.
is unequivocally been laid out that, yep, folks, this is it. I would have to say that that would be completely life changing, and I
Yeah.
would, and I'll just finish with this thing. Not that everybody would follow suit. I think that that's also a thing, but I think that if if yesterday I didn't know something and today I know something, and I am a different person than I was a year ago, 2 years ago, just because of the added experience and knowledge and information. But something that slaps you right across the face, I can't say that I wouldn't be changed from it, but I don't know. So that's just my
Right. Well, there are degrees. Obviously, something like that to come down and say, "Oh, yes, this one particular religion, it is correct. It is true." That is earth shattering, literally as well as figuratively. But uh, again, it's one of those things that is, well, that is something that is maybe within our personal control. But discovering that the earth has always been flat, it may blow our minds. It may shake up a few of the things that we have assumed. It may shake up the way we think about a few things, but it doesn't really affect day-to-day life. So there are varying degrees is what I'm getting at. And that kind of goes along with when I say some things don't mean anything. Um, there is meaning to any number of things, but it's all going to be in varying degrees,
Yeah,
you
but you
know.
wouldn't put the
So
Earth being flat at the extreme scale of that.
no, I wouldn't, because I don't think my personal life would change. I would have to examine some of my views. I would have to re-examine some of the things that I have thought about the earth, but my
Some,
day-to-day life isn't really going to change. Yeah, some, because I don't spend a lot of time thinking about those things, pondering those things. You
yeah,
know, there is more about the earth that we don't know than we do, you
yeah,
know.
but
So,
think about the things that would be a problem. So, for instance, we do spend a lot of money stargazing. The
yeah,
government does, and
yeah,
they pull that from us through
mhm,
taxes or whatever it is.
sure.
And they send, so if that were the case, what have they been spending their money on all this time? Um, People would be so. There are consequences that we can't foresee
Well,
necessarily,
true, but
but but well, go ahead, go ahead.
I don't think there's any new obstacles. I don't, because they're going to continue to get that money and spend it on those things. We have a lot of technology as a direct result of a lot of the exploration that they have done and the development of the technology to get them there. You know, the math and the physics involved in learning how to get people out of Earth's atmosphere and safely return them has been applied to other fields. And we have all benefited from those other fields.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
we don't know. So when you say something like that, well, number one, this is this is a thought experiment that what if we discovered something as earth shattering as, well, that the earth was flat. But when you say that to reinforce what we've learned and gained through the money expended,
mm-hmm.
But using this hypothesis of, or not, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
this sort of like thought experiment, that would pull into question the things like that. That, oh well, we've been spending money. What did they know when they knew it? Kind of like any other.
Well,
And that's just one example. So look, you still will need to do the daily things that you do.
yeah, and that's not going to change. You know,
But that's not going to change for anything.
um,
Regardless of any new information learned, you're still going to need to eat and sleep.
yes, but maybe not. I mean, the fact that the Earth is flat is not going to change my daily routine. I'm probably still going to do what I was going to do. There are some things that the news broke, let's use your example that this one religion is the true religion and the rest are not. That is earth shattering. That is ground shaking, and that is going to interrupt the flow of my day because probably from the rest of my year, because I'm going to have to sit back and do a lot of reflection and do a lot of digging and do a lot of soul searching, without no pun intended.
And where do you put an event like finding out that the Earth is a different shape on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most well, acute?
For me personally,
Well, yeah. Try to think.
about a 2. It
Try
would
try to.
it would be mind-blowing. It
So
would be interesting as hell. But at the end of the day, it would be one of those things that I probably would talk about for a week and then just move on to the next thing.
yeah, but you're okay. So this is one of those things where there's no need to go further with it with you, because there's no way that I could agree with you that if that were true, that would be a 2. That would be insane.
Oh, maybe I'm insane,
That
but
would be, no, not your decision.
that's how much of a priority I set it
No,
as.
not your
It's just
decision to, no, not your decision to call it a 2.
mhm.
The idea that that the now it's a plane, that
Mhm.
idea,
Mhm.
you won't hear the end of it. You won't
Oh,
hear the end of it
oh,
for forever and a day. I mean, it would be just so,
d-
the idea that it's a 2, and so number one, I mean, I'm not going to push it too much, but I'll push it just this much. Just and because I
mhm.
know from previous conversations that the flat Earth is not an impressive thing to you because you don't
Yeah,
believe in
it's
it.
not.
You don't believe in it. We're not talking that we believe in it. We're talking that what if this thing, and if you can pull yourself from knowing the ridiculous of it, it's like
I
any.
really am trying to. I really am trying to,
It's easy.
but
It's
I'm
easy.
also trying to examine how would that really affect my life. And don't get me wrong, at the time that day, it would shake me. I would be like, what the actual, you know, and then I would dig into it. But
Mhm.
once that initial shock wore off and the mind blownness, I would have to, and this is how I have to operate. I would have to revert back and say, how does this make my life different? And really, it wouldn't be much. There may be some, but I don't know all the ramifications. And I don't think anybody can guess all of the ramifications that are going to come from such an
It
announcement.
would be impossible to guess.
Yeah. So, but as it sits right now, all things being equal, I have to look over because here's where I'm getting at. That means it's been flat my entire life and my parents' entire life and my grandparents' entire life. Did that knowledge change anything? No, not really. It would shake up our
But
science. It would
what's
shake up
anything?
our
But wait,
assumptions,
but what is, so look,
but it
you're being
wouldn't.
too laissez-faire
But
with your
that's my
your
opinion.
yeah, but I'm explaining what my opinion is of your opinion.
Okay.
You're being
Okay.
you're being too laissez-faire
Hmm.
with your examination and conclusion and so on. Like it's
Well,
like you're
but
circling the sun like this, look like in a wobble, saying, oh yeah, well, okay, no big deal.
it's the truth. The tide is coming in.
I don't I don't know that I could not picture. Okay, so look, there's nothing that will not there's nothing that we could learn tomorrow in a general sense that will leave us without being able to eat. I'm sorry, that will not, anything that we have to still eat, sleep,
Sure.
and all these things. So if you use that as a metric, then it doesn't matter that
Well,
they discover an alien with wings
but I'm not.
flapping around Uranus.
But
It
I'm
doesn't
not.
matter.
But I'm not using that as my metric. What I'm using as my metric is my normal daily life,
I
my
just said that.
schedule for the week, and it's a lot more than just eating and sleeping. There's things that I do, there's places that I go, there's people that I visit. None of that's going to change. There are a lot of events that could change that. There are a lot of things that could change that and affect that.
You're not okay. So yes, you okay. I mean, so by saying eating and sleeping and a place to rest your head and stuff,
Hmm.
that encompasses conceptually the general
Hmm.
goings on of human day to day life.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Let's say tomorrow the Eiffel Tower, it's discovered there's an underground hidden alien submarine, or I don't know, whatever. Um, you're still gonna do all your, but it's a fantastical thing. Something like the Earth being a stretch of a plane or something like that, discovering that,
Hmm.
um, you're still gonna need to eat and this and that and this is, all these things, and you've been doing it all this time, like you said.
Hmm.
But it's not. What would be a what would be a freaking 10 then, other than the religious one? Because now
Okay,
that's
a 10 would be the big one comes. Out here, we talk about the big one. And the big one is a catastrophic quake
what
along
would
the
be a
fault line.
okay, a big one. What would be a 5?
Five.
Because
Oh,
you see,
wow.
there's a spectrum here, and
War.
you're placing the discovery of. I mean, okay, so for goodness sakes, the
War would be a 5 because
war.
it depends on where the war is. War could be a number one. You know,
Okay, all
if
right.
I'm personally involved in it, you ding dong Skippy, it's a number one. But if it's
So you,
half a world away,
yeah,
that might be a 5 to me. It might be a 4 to me. It just depends.
no, but okay. So if I were in Vietnam during the Vietnam War as a Vietnamese,
Mhm.
that would be a 10 or an 11 because I'm running around trying to find a way
Okay,
to.
I got it backwards. Okay, you're right. That would be a 10 to me. The big one would be a 10 to me. War would be a 5. If it directly involved me, you damn Skippy, it'd be a 5.
Yeah, anything that
Um,
involves you is
Here you
like
go. Here you
immediately.
go. Here you go. Jim Dockrell, a Chinese ICBM hitting Los Angeles. That's a 10. Even though it doesn't personally affect me, that's a 10.
Okay, yeah.
You
Well,
know,
how about this?
September 11th, 2001. That was a 10.
Well, how about this then? Because this is like it's
Hmm.
so. Let's remove the me
Hmm.
and let's just think in terms of humanity,
Hmm.
importance to humanity, knowledge. I mean,
Yeah.
for instance, I mean just knowledge on the level of in the human experience across the board, not you personally being affected
Okay.
in terms of you can't go about your
Hmm.
business the way you always have. Um, I something like that, and this is not. I mean, we could use a concrete, something that's real that has, okay, you know what's, so actually this is good because this is middle of the road and it kind of works. Okay. So for everybody.
Okay.
Because to some people it would be a 10, to other people it would not be. So it kind of fixes this thing because we really don't know at the end of the day what the heck, you know, even if something is incredibly shocking, people are so darn the way they are that nothing will impress them. You know, so okay, so in 2003, I think Clinton was still in office, if I'm not mistaken.
No,
or am I wrong?
Bush was in office.
Bush was in office. Okay, so it was Clinton before he stepped out that pushed, or not pushed, but encouraged, or whatever these presidents do when something is going to be worked out or whatever. He supported the Human Genome Project thing. Okay. This was like back at the end of, or middle end of the
late 90s and early 2000s. Yeah.
Clinton time. The amount of information we had back then rolling without the excessive internet we have now, I was unaware of the event. But in 2003, and it's a complicated story, by the way, because what happened was, I'll just a side road. When they began that study to try to map the human genome, they were trying to get the codes. They didn't have the tools, and it was too many letters. And so different labs began to work on it. And it got to the point where they were competing with each other, and people had prospects of making money from this, and it just everything you could imagine. So they were racing and the whole thing. It finally ended up that it was decreed or whatever. I mean, the details are out there, that all of it would be available to the world as heritage of the world. So anytime these people do a publishing thing, the genome of the specific dug up bones is released to the public and whatnot. I mean, you have to be an expert guy to go in there and find what the hell to do with it, but it's out there, so different labs can mess with it. So it's free to the public in theory, if you have the ability to and know-how. In 2003, they came to the conclusion, bar none, according to the thing, that there is, and I didn't know it until maybe a few years ago when I started talking about it, that there is no human race is categorically an African individual is closer to a European, how is it? And if you pull an African guy and you pull two Europeans, that African guy is closer to the one European, regardless of than the other European would be to the other guy in terms of individual people pulling, because the genes are all scrambled in everybody. Putting to the side physical this and that. They discovered that earth-shattering thing where for the past 100,000 or 1,000 or 100, let's say a few hundred years, there's been these notions of race and this and the black, the African people, of this, of that. I had no idea about that. It, much like you, it made no difference to the way I behaved around people, because I grew up being taught treat people kindly and this and that, because we're created by, just the religious, you treat people good, as far as you can have it, not due to other things. So it didn't matter to me in terms of the knowledge, but knowing it in a scientific way, I didn't learn of it until maybe a few years ago. Mind-blowing, but it's been around for excellent. So the world should be flipping over backwards saying, well, hey, look at this. And yet they're not. So I consider it an earth-shattering discovery. I didn't know about it until a decade after it was found, and I was living during the time that it was found. So to go to what you were saying, there could be all sorts of earth-shattering events, and people are just
oblivious to it. And that kind of bolsters my case that it doesn't affect really your life, because that is earth shattering.
Mm-hmm.
That has destroyed so many myths, so many of our presuppositions are just gone. They're off the table now. And they can be put down to just absolute bovine scat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of us still hold on to it, but there's no reason for it other than our own ignorance.
Yeah.
But it
It's an
didn't,
example.
and it's an excellent example, but practically, it didn't really change our lives. Now, it did change science.
Oh, yeah.
And that's always a good thing. That's always a good thing. Whether they prove or disprove something, to me, that's always a good thing. You know.
Let me give you one more example.
Okay.
This is a more localized example. Again, bolstering your point.
Mm-hmm.
But even though I'm bolstering your point, because we're human beings and it could go one way or the other at any given moment, that's the whole problem with all this, that
Yeah.
human beings are complicated. But anyways,
Big time.
well, yeah, so today I got a message from a friend on Facebook,
Uh,
and they said something like, man, it's outrageous, the gas, something, 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 something. And I
mm-hmm.
read it, I was like, the hell does that mean? And I went and made a quick Google and put gas crisis or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, Fort Lauderdale. So I read the article from my local area here
Mm-hmm.
that for the past 3 days, we've been in a gas crisis, and I've had no freaking idea whatsoever because there was flooding.
Yeah.
So they service 7 million gallons of gas a
Mm-hmm.
day in Dade
Mm-hmm.
County.
Wow.
Or at least from that one specific thing. I don't know if there's more, but 7 million gallons.
Yeah.
And because of the flooding, some of the pumps were screwed and this and that. The trucks
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do their thing. They've been down to servicing 3.5 million.
Okay.
And due to that, people are stuck in lines and gas stations. I live in the crux of Dade County,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no idea until that guy living somewhere in the heartland of America informed me that my neighborhood has a gas crisis.
Yeah.
So how's that
Yeah.
for
But what did you do with that information?
I
Did
thought
you
that
immediately go down and get gas?
nope,
Okay.
no,
See, that's what I mean.
I'll wait it
That
out.
that is potentially earth shattering. Shattering to your world, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You may have to take off. You may have to put Vigo in the back seat and buckle him into his rocket seat and split. So it is potentially earth shaking to you, but you didn't go off your nut about it. So, you know,
No,
bo-
because if
bo-
something
bo-
terrible happens, we're screwed.
no bonus points to you for not, doing the thing, for not being that guy who goes in and buys the last shelf loaded toilet paper. You know what I mean?
No, I can wait it out. But then again, I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm an exception to the rule in terms of my view of
Well, sure.
my participation level
But
in a lot of things.
and you have a high resistance to the herd mentality. But you notice, I mentioned the toilet paper thing. When COVID first hit, there wasn't a toilet paper shortage until people created one.
Yeah.
That herd mentality, that mob mentality created the shortage. They were still putting out just as many rolls as they did, but the minute a case got open, somebody scooped that entire case into their shopping cart and headed out the door with it.
Yeah.
I think I've told you this story before. Johnny Carson on the Tonight Show created a toilet paper shortage by making a joke about a toilet paper shortage the night before. The next day, people went out and they bulk bought it and cleared shelves. And he had to come on the next night and say, there is no shortage. Don't make one. That was a joke, people. Quit it, And it calmed down after about a week.
If a person can, so going full circle with that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard not to sound conspiratorial if you give a specific example. It's one thing, especially if you can back it up. But to be broad and leave it hanging opens a door for assumptions. But you can't avoid assumptions about your person regardless, because people have their own brains and they analyze according to themselves the world around them.
Right. You have to.
But to me, it's not a far stretch that media is actively looking for the best ways to put something out that will convince the public at large, or at least kind of like what Greg said a long time ago with the Nigerian prince thing. As long as they get X amount of people, they've done their successful campaign. And that could go for any number of different. So I think that governments and companies, and they do research enough to figure out,
Sure.
oh, hell, we have targeted ads given to each of us anyhow.
Sure.
So I don't know. It's a far stretch to think, that they're now the reason that they're doing it. Like if I were to say they're doing it because they are ready to herd us into cages in designated locations spread across the Mojave Desert in order to implant chips in us that will acquire geolocation. Like, so the idea that they have the capacity, and you leave that open as, yeah, they have the capacity, I think you're still in the realm of that. But if you start creating a narrative with specific things, like saying, and then the transmitter wire that emits from the chip, it's the AK-519, and you start creating this whole thing, but you don't have any.
Yeah.
Like, let's say you did have like the documentation. Look, it's the AK-2019 transmitter doohickey, and here's the actual. That's one thing, because now you have a source that's showing that, hey, look. But to create this whole like the lizard people, just all that.
Yeah.
Like the earth, but the flat earth, just like all of those things.
But
it's like,
you answered your own question a few times with the targeted ads and this, that, and the other. Those are people who have found a rice bowl. They have found a career in maybe not they're the originators of the story, but perpetuating that story because people find it entertaining, or they do believe it, or they're right there along. Oh yeah, I agree. I saw this up in the sky and I can't explain what it was. So I definitely agree that this is happening right now. And it's a matter of, okay, buy my book, go to my website, sign up for my email newsletter. Look, here's a friend of mine. He worked for the government. He knows the inside story. Buy his book. Go to his website, sign up for his email newsletter. Oh, look at his friend. He's a scientist. He knows the real deal. Buy his book. Keep going to his website, sign up for his, there's a rice bowl out there for everybody to eat off of. And their big thing is to keep the controversy going. They don't want a solution to it. They want the controversy to keep going, because if there is a solution, they got to get a job, because that rice bowl got taken away and it's in the dishwasher now. So there's always going to be people to do that. There will always be that. Everywhere you can possibly leak, somebody is going to hang a bucket. But that doesn't alter, I hesitate to say real fact, because we find so many real facts that just are no longer facts. That earth-shattering information you were talking about, the Human Genome Project, wiped a whole bunch of facts right off of the table. And that was a massive dump into the decay of facts that just rendered a bunch of stuff inoperative. I mean, there were entire fields of study that were eliminated because of that.
Well, let me yeah, it's but the only way a fact or some earth-shattering thing like that. So if you're impervious to if you're a person that's so okay, if I were to write if we were to now Google a list of all available categories of subjects,
Mhm.
to include the items of the subjects, to include the studies of to
Oh,
include in
man,
all
there's
of information.
innumerable. Yeah.
And we drew circles around each one, and we drew in the middle. There's a name for that kind of map.
Mhm.
In the middle, us of what we know,
Yeah.
and brought those circles in to the degree that we know
Mhm.
over each subject. The amount that we don't know is more than what we do know.
Oh, definitely.
Effectively, we are ignorant people.
Oh, yeah.
The word has negative connotations, but in fact, we're sublimely ignorant.
Yeah.
Although people don't will never use that word, but I've started practicing reminding myself. It's been a few years, but I've been doing it consistently. Or yeah, I've been doing pretty consistently. Um, reminding myself. That doesn't mean that you toss the baby out with the bathwater in terms of if you know something, you can like we do. We push back and forth and talk about things, but the amount that we don't know is so incredible that it's just so. Anyways, um, one thing is that not knowing stuff,
Mhm.
which we don't know. I mean, look, I'm not a
Yeah.
doctor. I'm not a
You
lawyer.
don't know what you can't know what you don't know. And
You
I have never found a derogatory any kind of shame in the word ignorant. It simply means don't know.
It
It's
depends on the
completely different from stupidity. Stupid is you do know and do it anyway. But ignorant means you just don't know.
that's where I'm going with it. So
Mhm.
one thing is being ignorant,
Mhm.
like you're saying, you just don't know. And by the way, it depends on the context. Because if you say, in a conversation with somebody, you know what, dude, you're so ignorant, this and that. Now you're using it in a connotation
Well,
that's nasty.
yeah,
But
well, yeah, but
that
intent is
aside,
completely different. But yeah.
I'm just using that example as that
Yeah.
it could be used as a thing. But I'm just
Oh,
using
sure.
it as a clinical in a clinical
Mhm.
sense, like sterile sense.
Yeah, context always gives you away.
Yeah, because if you're off on some sort of tangent and
Mhm.
your aim is to damage and you use it in that sense, then you're just being, not a nice
You're
person.
just being mean, yeah.
Yeah. But like in this clinical sense. So that's one thing. But the other thing is what we've talked or I've mentioned to you before is persistent ignorance. In other words, just nope, 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 nope on something
Yeah.
that's so obvious as the sun shining down, and yet it's consistent. Now, some people cannot reason out or allow themselves to open up a door into certain. We all have things like that
Sure.
because we have to deal with the fact that we're human, emotional beings, and we do have a mind, and we do have an ego, and we do have a sense of being that makes us understand ourselves in the position of the world where we're in. I mean, there's a
And it
whole
may go against our core beliefs.
and
You know?
sometimes there's that. So that one with the human genome thing is a big one.
Yeah.
I don't see. Let's put it this way, just to end this part of it. I'm in groups where that's the subject,
Mhm.
and the people in there, that fundamental fact, for all intents and purposes, according to what they write and the way they write, and the meaning behind the structure of the things that they write, shows that by no, by in any terms, do they accept that factoid
Yeah.
that that humans, regardless of, you know,
Skin color or any of that stuff. Hair color,
are
eye color.
one one race,
Exactly.
and they're in the group. They know the strategy, the maps and the this and the information, and they're constantly talking about this and that, and yet they and I've crossed no lines crossed on my side, but I've said things that cross lines in their personal lives in the context of the group, and the retribution has been great and terrible because the threat is a cultural one. It's a heritage one. It's a worldview one, and it's any number of
Mm-hmm.
things. And so,
Tribalism, pride, things like that. Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean, so that's the story. So now, I
Uh,
mean,
and to
well, yeah.
be
Go ahead.
honest, I don't see that ever going away. We are a tribal people. And if you
Yeah.
are of my tribe, you're supposed to be my friend. And you're supposed to more or less agree with me on most things. We expect to differ on a few things. I may think my apples are a hell of a lot better than your peaches or pears, but that's my opinion. We both agree that fruit is great to plant and very profitable, but you know, my apples are still better than your pears.
So
That's my opinion.
so I have discovered a incredible um kink in the matrix that is it's it's unbelievable. It's so big. Well, in my mind it is. Although I see the panorama in front of me, um, a fault in the earth,
Mm-hmm.
in the civilization, a crevice
Mm-hmm.
that is so it's so clear, because of everything I've been studying. Um, that I don't know that I could say because it would be so savage. I'll just
Oh,
say, let me see what.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I'll just do some sort of summary of it, unless you have something else to say. It's so controversially savage that, in fact, the only way I could do it properly would be to actually have like all the references to show that I'm not crazy. But
Mm-hmm.
oh boy, so yeah, I can't go. See, I'm saying it live, and it's kind of like what do you call it when you don't give up the goods?
Yeah. Well, all I was going to say was Greg Snow Crusher said ignorance is bliss because what you don't know it affects you, or
What?
you
Say
don't
that
know
again.
you don't. Ignorance is bliss because what you don't know it affects you.
That's right. That is absolutely right.
So if you don't know, I can see that. If you don't know being out in the sun all day could lead to skin cancer, unprotected that is, could lead to skin cancer. You could very well develop skin cancer. You don't know how it's affecting you because you don't know that it could possibly be a bad thing. So you go along your life happily or unhappily. I mean, depending upon what you're doing out in the sun all day long, you know. And then Jamie made it personal. Eloy didn't know a scroll saw blade could cut him, and then it did.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
well, I mean, that's part of it. But yeah, I see I see where that is. If you don't know how something, if you don't know something, you can't possibly know how it could affect you.
No.
because you don't have that knowledge to begin with. Um,
Benjamin Franklin set up a long pole,
mhm, excuse me.
and during thunderstorms,
Mhm,
because the colonies were plagued by these wooden structures catching fire
mhm,
for as long as they could remember. And what they would do is that they'd go to the houses next door, they'd let the one house burn, and the houses next door they would salvage because it
mhm.
was an act of God.
Yeah.
Benjamin Franklin came along, installed this long rod, at which point houses stopped burning.
Yeah. He basically developed the lightning rod. Yeah.
And so, prior to him doing that, there was another paradigm, or
Hmm.
paradigm. After him doing that, the people that said let it burn, well, oh my goodness, let's put up more poles.
Yeah.
So, you know,
The
but
lightning
there
hits
was
the
an
pole, not the house.
immediacy
Hmm.
effect, you know, to adding that benefit to the society at the time and whatnot. And
Sure.
so it's like with everything, I mean, it's you could say the same thing with like cell phones and internet and all that. I mean, you know, it's just human
Well,
beings. It's an incredible thing. Yeah.
medical science, look at antibiotics. The number of diseases that were just 100 years ago were just deadly. My antibiotics can now cure them. Yes, they're developing some resistance to some of our antibiotics. You hear about antibiotic resistant tuberculosis, but the number of people who die every year of tuberculosis is nothing like what it was in 1910 or 1920 or even 1930, before the advent of all these antibiotics that come out that can cure these diseases. you know Something as simple as cataracts. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, a diagnosis of cataracts, there was one thing you could do, and that was wait to go
Surgery.
blind.
No, they
No,
had
you there,
surgery
there
in the
wasn't even.
80s. In the 80s, they had surgery.
It was experimental, and it sometimes worked, sometimes didn't. But now you can go in and zap 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 with a laser. They don't even open you up. There's no surgery involved. It's all done with a laser.
Right, right.
So just things like that is earth shattering, because people who were forced to sit home and go blind no longer have to worry about that.
Well, but you can see the effects of that, and you have the long lens of history. We
Exactly
don't,
my
you,
point.
you,
We're
we,
looking at it through a 20th century, 21st century rear view mirror.
yeah, an event in the future,
Hmm.
a hypothetical event in the future is hard to quantify
Hmm.
because number one, it's hypothetical, and number two, it's in the future, or vice versa.
Hmm.
And so it's one of those things. So we don't know how we personally would react. We don't
Right.
know how it would affect. We could make assumptions based on prior knowledge up to this point,
Yeah.
but it's
You
basically
know,
predicting the future based on
well,
certain facts that
all we can all we can go by is what has happened in the past, and read about what's going on today. And it depends on what field you're talking about, whether it be medical science or technology, or let's look at AI as an example. Okay, there are a lot of people who are just absolutely convinced, they're filled with doom and gloom, and they just know that AI means robots are going to take over the world. I'm not going to say that that can never happen, because we don't know that. But I certainly see some very good applications of AI. And I see a lot of it is going to be up in the air. I mean, let's think about it. There are people who could use it for very nefarious reasons. They could take one of our videos right here off of YouTube and have you or I say whatever they want us to say. And there's enough of our voice print that it could be duplicated. We could be put into other situations. I mean, we could have you jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge tomorrow. So
using that,
and me down there with a net, catching you.
so what I think of when you say that, you just brought up one of the various points that are being talked about in current events.
Sure.
Because there was a interview with Elon Musk and Pierce Morgan. I don't know if you saw it or not.
No, I didn't.
Well, he sat down and talked about the dangers of it and whatnot and all this and that. But you saw something within recent times that made you uh, say such things, and it was probably brought to you through your internet travels.
Well, yeah, internet travels is the way I'm digesting this, because I've heard about AI in various applications and wanted to see if I could make use of it in those applications, basically video making and editing and things like that. What I would specifically for closed captioning, I would like an AI that would learn its mistakes so I don't have to keep going in and correcting grammar and spelling and things like that for my closed caption. I'd like an automatic system to do it. And while I'm researching AI as a whole, I'm reading these other articles.
So what I thought of when you said the AI thing and that the threat and whatnot, but you also said that it can be used for positive things, such as what you're saying that you want to use it for with the closed captioning and whatnot. What I thought when you brought that up was the concept of, you brought forth one of the, let's call it the talking points that are out there, which is concern on the one end of what that could mean as far as danger. And you did make an example, or you did offer an example. What if they pulled one of our faces and made us say things that, so you said all that. And what made me think was, this AI is a specific topic over a specific technology. And it brings fear to the one end. Oh, well, what will happen in that? And this brings me back to the beginning thing that we were talking about at the beginning. Whether AI or no AI, we have no say in the matter.
No, we don't.
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like the same as like the fall of the Roman Empire, us standing there at the precipice at the of the end. Regardless whether we knew it was the end or not, the end was the end.
Right.
And so all these things that are put in front of us for us to view, that we have no control over, to include the thing we were talking about, ignorance is bliss, and all the things we were talking about. What benefit does it to us to worry about these things? Because we don't have any control over it. But yet we do, as if we do have control over it to a certain degree. Because we don't, at the same time, and I can't speak for you, but we're human, and I get the sense that maybe to one degree or the other, we share these things, all of us together. There are things out of our control, but for some reason, the process of being informed over a subject, like let's say the economic stability of the Western world and blah, 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 and this and that. What the hell am I sitting here in Sweetwater? Yes, I'm acquiring this knowledge. What the hell? At best, I'm over at the 7-Eleven getting a Twinkie.
Yeah.
So why does the news, and we've talked about this too, put in front of us a plate that we can munch on of all this negativity and things that are out of our control? Some people would argue, I'll end with this. Some people will argue, and I don't negate this necessarily full-heartedly. I think that there's some truth to it, a good degree of truth to it. They do it to keep us perpetually. And who are they? The people that, consuming. We're cattle roaming the field, eating more grass, producing more manure that becomes fertilizer, keeping us within the fenced boundaries, so that society functions. Because if you get people too enamored with philosophical ideas and this and that, and people start dropping out, tuning in and dropping out, well, hell, you got yourself a big problem.
Well, it's not. It doesn't even go that far. The minute people, what scares them the most is people figure out that they don't need them anymore. You know, and then they lose their power. You were talking about. You were leading towards. This is where your brain heads to, and you think that the media was this, that, or the other. That, and you didn't finish.
That they, why would they serve us a plate of negativity instead of serving us a plate of the Brady Bunch? Why not Andy Griffith instead of Nightmare on Elm Street? And if you're going to feed us Nightmare on Elm Street in a general sense, shouldn't Nightmare on Elm Street be way down here? Maybe some a little bit to keep balance, because I mean we are, after all,
Okay.
in a, and yet accentuate these things that are um let's say innocent, free, full, positive. There is such a thing as positive and negative. Positive are things that make us think that the future is broad and open, things that make us healthy in terms of relationships, in terms of financial growth, so that we can have extended vacations and the family can grow and multiple, just the whole thing. And then there's negative things that circumvent, or it creates, let's round up the wagons and protect
Okay.
ourselves from the world at large. And that would be your Nightmare on Elm. Why do they accentuate Nightmare on Elm Street perpetually on things that we have no control of, and they act when they talk? Well, what do you think of this, folks? What do you think of that? In a roundabout way, as if you have any say in the matter. It's a weird, and sure, I know that people like negativity, but I'm just saying
I'll tell you why.
something's not right.
I'll tell you why. Money.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to go to the movies. You get to the theater and there are two movies playing. It's two screens and it's the only theater in town. You have your choice. Nightmare on Elm Street, The Wizard of Oz. Which one are you going to go see?
Get me 5 tickets. I'm going to watch Nightmare on Elm Street back to back.
That proves the point. Man or dog bites man is not a news story. Man bites dog is a news story. If you look at the news cycle over the last however long, go back. There is always something to get people ginned up about. And it's to get you. Before, it was to keep you coming back to the news to see their advertisers, or keep you buying the newspaper so you'd see the ads in the newspaper. Now it's to get you to go to their website so that the pop-up ads will keep popping up right there next to you. It's all driven by money. Some of them have an agenda. Let's make no mistake about it. Some of them have an agenda, whether it be a political agenda, a personal agenda, a social agenda, an economic agenda, but it all comes down to money and power. Those are the two things that make the world go round: money and power. And if they can keep you and me fighting or keep our angst levels up, that's the distraction. Some can come in on the white horse and say, I'm here to fix all your problems. And other people can be there to keep stirring the pot. Turn up the heat, stir the pot. Turn up the heat, stir the pot. There's always got to be a sensational story. It was Lyme disease. Then it was the flesh-eating virus. Then it was all the shark attacks down in Florida and off the California coast. And then it was this, and then it was that. There's always a crisis to keep us filled with angst and keep us worrying. And if that doesn't work, then they throw out other stuff to keep us fighting with each other about race, about religion, about sex, about gender, about whatever they can grab hold of, so that you will keep going back to that website and they can keep putting those ads in front of you. Facts don't matter, because if they make a mistake, they can say, oh, we corrected it. You had to go to page 128 and look below the ad for Doc's car wash. But we corrected our mistake. You know, it's 100% money. Make no mistake, everything you watch, be it on a big screen, a little screen, on your computer, everything you hear, be it on the radio or a record album or a cassette or DVD or CD, everything you see on TV, in the newspaper, in a magazine, everything is geared towards advertising. Everything. That's the reason for it. They have to entertain you to keep you watching. But that's not the primary mission. Now, that may not be the primary mission of the person who is doing the acting or the director. They may really genuinely want to create art, but they know that there's going to be advertising involved. And that's why he reaches over and picks up a Pepsi and takes a sip and not a Mountain Dew, because Pepsi paid to put that can there. Nothing happens by accident.
All right, so let me ask you this as a final thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you were Truman in the Truman Show, the Mark Lindsay.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Okay.
And you had the option to remember the moment where he said, Truman, you could turn around and enjoy this. There's nothing for you out here. And Truman turned around to the camera. He broke the what is it called?
The fourth wall.
The fourth wall. He broke the fourth. And he says, if I don't see you, goodbye. Blah 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 blah. And walked through the door into the real world.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't seen The Matrix.
No, I haven't.
But there's a similar theme going on.
I know the red pill versus blue pill thing.
There's a similar theme with the red pill, blue pill. Because what happens is that he's living in a dream. But in the Matrix one, it's not the Truman Show, beautiful, everything, happy-go-lucky. It's still a crappy. He decided to go from crappy to even worse in the Matrix thing. But anyways, would you, if it's the Mark Lindsay Show, at that moment you're standing there to walk through that door, would you have walked into the real world, or would you have turned around and lived out your life in this?
I'd have walked through the door. I'd have walked through the door. I mean, think about it. You're being presented with seeing what's out there. The Truman Show, he had never been out of there. He'd always wanted to go. Every time he tried to go, something happened that prevented him from going. He wanted to go explore. Here he's being given the opportunity. Put in the same situation, I'd have followed him right out that door. You bet. I might have held it for him.
Interesting. Knowing what's outside.
Well, no, not knowing what's outside.
No,
but that's part of the problem. That's part of the thing. He knew there was something there, but he didn't know what.
No. Okay, we know the movie. I'm saying you, Mark Lindsay.
Yeah. I would go out the door.
Knowing what's outside. Like you now, knowing what's in that dome, that world, and knowing what's outside that world. But you're in that position where you see what I'm saying? Like, you have the knowledge of what's outside and inside, but you've been living there. You're standing by the door, ready to.
Yeah, I'd go through the door.
You'd go to the. Okay. Now, two things. And by the way, there's no right or wrong answer.
Well, I'm inquisitive by nature, so.
No, there's no right or wrong answer, because isn't that a personal decision?
Sure.
Based on what one would, for any number of factors, mainly what one would be satisfied with, or
Sure.
hopefully satisfied. So it's a personal decision. There's no wrong or right answer to that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
But two things. One, this is not a question. This is more an observation. The other one is a question. So I'll
Okay.
start with the observation, and then I'll hit you with a question. The
Mm.
observation is this. My observation is that, to one degree, what you're looking at in that movie is that he's stepping out from a cocoon
Mhm.
existence that's controlled into another one,
Mhm.
because it is controlled. There is a difference between Truman, and you mentioned it, that inside they prevent him from doing this, and that. But you didn't mention the benefits of it. We didn't explore the benefits of it, because, or are there any benefits of it? So, in my thinking, he stepped out from one paradigm into another paradigm. There's no escape, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that's just an observation. There's no escape. And I don't know if it's necessarily true that the outside is necessarily better. It may be better in some ways, this and that, but when you check off all the pros and cons, I don't know. With that said, or if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah. Don't you think it's better to be in control of your own destiny, whether you know what you're doing or not?
That's what I'm saying. That there is no that what I'm saying is,
But see, within the dome, he was not in control of his own destiny. He was restricted to what was provided for him. They went through the motions. He paid for this, he bought that, he went to the store for this,
that it was all paid for.
he met this. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
was all for show. He wasn't
was-
actually working
Yeah.
for anything. He wasn't actually being paid to do anything. He was basically a prisoner.
Okay, so everything you just said,
Mhm.
for my purposes, you can
Mhm.
plant that here in the real world. Okay, let's just put that.
And some people do live that existence. You're absolutely right. Some people do live that existence. But
Okay.
I'm an inquisitive son of a gun. And if given the chance to look behind the curtain,
Mhm.
I'm not going to ignore that man. I'm
Okay.
going to go ask him where the John is, you know?
Okay. My analysis is that when you open that curtain,
Mhm.
you're not going anywhere.
Mhm.
There's some things that are changing, but you're still a prisoner. It's kind of, so there's a scene in the Matrix where, and the idea is not the Matrix. The idea is the moral of the story behind the thing. So the Matrix, it could be Daffy Duck and this and that, but it's like the actual meaning behind, where he's in a train station,
Mhm.
or a subway station or something like that. It's a really good movie. The first one, you should see it. If not for anything, it's an entertaining movie, but it's interesting as hell. He's in a train station, and he can't get out. If you run to the left, it's kind of like those video games. You pop up on the opposite side, and he's stuck. He's trying to find a way to get the hell out. And there's just one person, I think, if I remember well, that he needs in order to be able to escape the thing and this and that. But he's trapped in a waiting station. So it's kind of like that. But anyways, to the side, the question. So you would decide to go through the door. Question for you: how many people? Two questions. How many people, if placed in the same situation, knowing what's outside the door, but
Mhm.
you're inside the Truman Show world, a moth, um, would leave, and how many would stay? How would that look like? I mean, I know that this is an impossible question, but, and then the other question is, how many people outside, like in our world, if had the choice of going in, would go in?
I think it's going to be roughly the same 10%. I think about 10% would stay because when you're warm and cozy in a pile of crap, keep your mouth shut. Don't worry about it. What do you got to worry about? Everything is fine. And I
Interesting.
think so. I think about 10% would stay, but I think more people, I think 90% would want to just to see what's out there. Maybe they'll want to try to get back in. But I mean, I think people are more curious than that. Um, I can anecdotally tell you a story. I've been capturing some of our old VHS tapes onto the computer, and I shared one with Linda the other day, and it was when her mom, my in-laws, came over to Germany to visit us, and it was just us, and we're both looking at it going, Jesus, were we ever really that young and that thin? And we got to talking about the time we spent over in Europe and some of the amazing things we've seen and some of the things that we experienced that nobody could go over and experience now simply because times have changed. I mean, we were there when the Berlin Wall came down. And I used to drive bus for the USO for tours of they called it the 1K zone. You were within 1 kilometer of the border with East Germany. And I mean, we stood 6 feet away from the actual border, which was a row of stones painted red and white. And then about 25 yards beyond that was the first fence. And then no man's land of minefield, and then more fences. So I have been standing there with East German guards standing there facing me with AK-47 rifles locked and loaded, waiting for me to cross that border so they could shoot. It got real fast. And you start thinking in other ways. Whoa, let me just back up a little bit against this bus so they can see that I'm not a threat and he's got no reason to point that son of a gun at me. 2 years later, the Berlin Wall came down. And immediately, the first thing I wanted to do after that happened was I wanted to go see those towns on the other side of that fence. I had only seen them through barbed wire and chain link. I wanted to go see that. And so 4th of July weekend, 1990, we did exactly that. We drove off of the map because the maps ended about 1 kilometer inside East Germany and there was nothing. We drove all over what used to be East Germany just to see it, just to be there. We had no purpose. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know what we were going to get into. We didn't know what we were going to find. But our curiosity was such that we had to do it. And I mean,
it was risky too because you don't know.
Well, it wasn't risky anymore because there was no East German government. The Germanys had reunified, but no, they hadn't reunified by then. But there really wasn't an East German government, and it was wide open borders.
What I'm saying is, well,
But
I don't know, but I'm saying, so if you walk into a hungry tribe of cannibals,
mhm.
I know they're not a hungry
Well,
tribe of
yeah,
cannibals, but they it's not like they had everything they wanted,
right.
and
Your point is well taken because it did look like time stopped in 1947. It really did. Um, and we ate in a little guest house. I've told you the story before. I know we were the first Americans that they had ever met and talked with, and that kind of an experience was something I don't know that could be experienced by anybody else. In that they didn't know how to take us, they didn't know what we were going to be like, and we didn't speak German very well. And we had these Rhine-Hessen accents in the little bit of German that we did speak, but it was all about just the exploration of the unknown. So walking through that door on the Truman Show, I would equate it to what we did as a microcosm of that. Yes, it is a big, beautiful world out there, and there is good and there's evil. And maybe not everything is going to be terrific, but it beats the heck out of what's been going on here. If he was happy and satisfied with his life, he would have turned around. He would have never walked through that door.
Yeah, he wasn't satisfied.
So that's what I'm getting at. But curiosity, now maybe he opened the door and looked out and said, "Oh no, this ain't for me," and went right back in. We don't know because the film ended.
No, I mean
But yeah, but the implication is there that he went on and, had a happy life.
well, wait a second. That part,
You know,
he had a real
it
life,
was the implication. Yes. So but yes, he had a real life. There you go.
which
That's better.
includes all the potential uh, dramas that the outside world
Hmm.
offers. But
Right.
um, so I'll say, as another little swing around with the thing in the Matrix movie,
Hmm.
the premise is that he's in a dream world,
Hmm.
which is our world right now.
Yeah.
For the purposes of this movie, it's as if you and I are in, and all of us are in the Matrix
Hmm.
with computers and the world at large, but we're actually in a cocoon
Hmm.
on this very same planet, hooked up to this huge machines that suck humans into the system, like for energy, because the machines have taken over. They
Hmm.
put people into productions of birth, into cocoons where they sleep, and they make them dream, so they grow up in that cocoon.
Hmm.
And so once they're ready to be used as energy, they get sucked in like a battery and chewed out. And this one protagonist, Neo,
Hmm.
is off. Oh, people have awakened in the real world,
Hmm.
and they are trying to salvage that world, but they have to free the minds of people that are asleep. So they go into the dream world with some machinery, whatever, blah blah blah. It's called the Matrix, and they offer him the red pill or the whatnot, and he chooses that. And when he wakes up, he's in this miserable, even worse than where he started, situation.
Hmm.
But there's one of the gang, the human gang. Here's the thing, that he's awake in the real world. So it's a dingy. They eat food that has no taste. It's like and they're trying to do their job to try to rescue this humanity which is inside the Matrix. And he goes into the Matrix to talk to the machines. That's how they communicate. And so he comes in here through a machine that's connected to the back of your head to talk to the machines to betray his people, because what he wants is to live in the Matrix. And he has a sit down with the machines, which are these agent type looking people. It's all
Hmm.
computers, so it's in the mind and whatnot. And he's having dinner at this fancy restaurant, and he's has a glass of wine and steak, and he's chewing on it, and he says, I mean, you should watch the movie. I think it's worth. He says, I know that when I put this delicious steak in my mouth, that I'm not eating steak. I know that this wine, I'm not drinking this wine. It's so great. It's like, and you know what? Um, I want this life, the Matrix life,
Hmm.
that's giving him the illusion that he's in a dream state. He just wants to enjoy,
Yeah.
and forget that whole thing. So he betrays his friends in order to do that.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Well, and that's what I mean. There's a certain percentage of the population that would never have left that dome, that they're satisfied with what they have. And, more power to them.
But do you see any positive to Truman's world? Are there any positives that you could you what they call steel man, which means go for broke on laying it thick on why it's positive to that world to be there, to stay there? Could you do that? Can you find redeeming quality?
That's a hard one, man. That's a hard one. You know, you've got relative safety, but that's never been my primary concern because life is always a crapshoot. You don't know what's going to happen when you get up in the morning. And to be fair, you don't even know that you're going to get up in the morning. Nothing jumps out at me. I'll put it that way. I would have to really sit and analyze it, but nothing jumps out at me. Nothing positive jumps out at me because I've always been that guy who wants to be in control of my own destiny. I've not always made the right decision. I've not always made the right call, but you know, everything good that's happened has happened because I've worked for it. Everything's bad that's happened has happened as a result of my decisions, be they good, bad, or indifferent. You
But can
know,
you steal? Okay, so you can't steel man it then. In other words, steel manning it is that against your wishes, your knowledge, um, or your personal reckoning in terms of the conclusions you come to, can you make the most strong? Can, can you make the strongest case contrary to your understanding of why it would be good?
no, because I'm not that guy. I'm not
It's
that
an
guy.
okay. It's you know um
Dude, I'm a recovering real estate agent, and I was the worst real estate salesman in the world. I talked myself out of more business than I created myself because I can't. I, I have a I have a philosophical problem with trying to convince somebody that they want something that they don't want.
if
You
somebody
know.
put forth this is just a thought experiment here, but there is such a thing called steel manning,
Hmm.
um, which is basically that practice. It's the
Yeah.
practice of, so like let's say you're uh, an outrageous I'm not going to say because so distasteful, it's against my like things can be so but to be able to take someone's idea and repeat it back to them in the strongest and most positive light, even contrary to your belief, um, the practice of doing that
Uh-huh.
is actually very beneficial. As distasteful as it might be, and I've not practiced it a lot. I've tried a little bit here and there. It's a very disconcerting thing because basically you're making someone's argument for them in the most strong way that you possibly could. That goes
Yeah.
against your thing. But what the benefit of that? Well, what could you imagine what the benefit of that would be?
I'm sure you could tell me, but I can't see a benefit of it. And because I have a philosophical problem trying to convince somebody of something I don't myself believe in. I'm
The
not that guy.
benefit the benefit of doing that is a you by confronting these things that are possibly in opposition to what you believe,
Mhm.
you also potentially correct any weaknesses in your arguments, and your ideas of reality, and conclusions. You also weed out the things that you thought of the opposition as inconceivable, as more reasonable, if they are more reasonable, and you reinforce what you already um, thought as unreasonable. In other words, by doing that, by facing that mirror, um, you put things into a different light perspective that helps you clear the decks of the things that you may be biased and incorrect about, um, to get a better understanding
but
of
but
the
I
opposition.
can do that without trying to BS somebody into something that they don't necessarily want to do. I can do that by studying the topic at hand. I can do that by looking at both sides to see who has the more convincing argument and look at the evidence to see who has the most convincing evidence. I don't necessarily have to put myself in one person's shoes or another's. I can look at the argument and make my opinion based on that. So, I see where you're going, and I can see where that would be of use to some people. I'm just not that guy. I'm just not that person. If I don't believe it, I'm not going to try to convince you that I do. Because, well, number one, I'm the world's worst liar. Number two, I can't say it with any amount of conviction. Because if I can't convince myself of it, how the hell do I expect to convince you?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you that it's a tough one.
It's a very tough one. It's a very tough one.
It's a tough one, but I would consider it indispensable. Although I've not practiced it by any stretch, I have done it in certain things, and it has
now
corrected my ideas. Because here's the thing. Go ahead.
If you're put in a position where you have to debate somebody, okay, and you're given, picture yourself back in school, and you have to debate this person, and here's the topic, and this is the position you have to take. You have to be pro this, and he's going to be against this. You have to make your case and debate him. Now, whether you believe it or not, there's a competition element involved there. I don't know how I do, but I could see that because I see that as play acting. That's not really my opinion, but I have to make this case and present evidence to support this side of the debate.
I would say it better this way. In my opinion, better this way. In the case of a debate or an opposing idea or concept or whatever, you want to know your enemy. You want to know the ideology. You want to breathe it. You want to dream about it. You want to internalize it. You want to chew it up and be able to spit it out. You want to reconstruct it. And if you don't do that, if you have an enemy, it could be an idea. It could be but we're talking about ideas. It could be philosophy. It could be whatever. If you have an enemy or a philosophy that's against your position,
right?
There's the only way to know that your position is sound or fairly sound using that other position that's coming against you as a mirror and you facing it.
I will agree with that.
Right. So the process is uncomfortable because depending on the subject can be very uncomfortable.
And I will agree with that in that in order to have an opinion
of religion. Go ahead.
In order to have your opinion, you have to be able to know what that opinion is on. And if you have an enemy, you have to be able to study that enemy.
Right. Yeah.
But I don't think you have to become one to understand them.
Well, here's the thing. So that's a good point. But it's a very difficult situation. It's a very difficult situation, what you just laid out, because I'm thinking of specific. Here's the thing. I'm thinking of specific things, but we're using a generalization to keep it like.
Okay, let's generalize a little bit more. Let's look at World War II. The Allied troops of any country, Canada, the US, the UK, the Free French, they didn't have to become Nazis to fight them. That's what I'm getting at. They had a side, they had a belief. They didn't have to look at, well, maybe let's look at their side and see if they have any no,
Oh,
they
you
didn't
better
have to do that.
no, you better believe. You better believe that maybe not everybody, because everybody has their positions. You better believe that they studied, slept, ate, chewed, internalized, because you need to know how you're to know how you're. So I'll just look. I
Maybe
mean,
the generals had to do all that, but the
in the
average foot
military,
soldier doesn't. You do what you got to do.
in the military, I would assume that maybe
Mhm.
some people. Well, anyways, spies and whatnot. But I'll use spies as an example, because you have to be a damn convincing spy, even though it just
Yeah, but they're such a minority of people. It's not even funny. But yeah, I your point is
the,
taken.
the principle here is that to know the opposition idea, the
Mhm.
best thing to do is to know it. Well,
You have,
anyways,
yeah, you have to study them. Yeah.
yeah. So you can bark it back at them,
Mhm.
right? To convince them that hell yeah, what you just said is exactly what I believe. If you can do that, that means you know the material
Mhm.
and they're accepting it. But by you knowing the material, you're also knowing where your bull
Mhm.
potential bull
Yeah.
is at, and you
Yeah.
correct it in order to correct it in in because you
Yep.
were wrong, or
Yep.
correct it in because you were right. But you have to so the Cubans send over here spies that came here on a plane,
Yeah.
and they became a hero here, and they married here, and they spent a decade here. Turns out nobody knew they were a spy until they found out they were a spy.
Mhm.
They hightailed it once they got what they needed. They hightailed it back and returned to Cuba. They left a marriage here. They left people here. They left the whole industry here, or a whole group of people that were shocked of it. And so, so they came in. They had to act,
Mhm.
like this whole thing. I mean, this is this is another thing. I just brought it up because I thought about it. But in the case of an ideology or a thinking pattern or this or that, and somebody presents an opposition to you, the idea of steel manning, yes, you're giving the person their talking points and concepts back at them, but you're also showing them that you know what their points are,
Yes.
and therefore it makes you better in order to defend against their bull if it
Right.
is bull. But the danger is that you might discover some points that you're wrong about, and if you're on about
Well,
seeking the better course, the truthful course, then you in theory one would change certain parts to better correct their trajectory into the path of what's true.
well, you've heard me say it many, many times. You have to be hard on your own opinions because that's how you discover your own BS. It's not just, okay, I think this. Why do I think that? Study it. You do have to look at the opposing side,
Yeah.
but you don't have to make their argument for them to reinforce your own. You know,
I don't know
I
what that means. What do you mean?
well, well, what I'm getting at is if you're trying to convince me the sky is green, I don't have to. All I can do is look at it, look at the empirical information, look at your side, see why you say the sky is green, and see what I have over here that could refute that. But I don't have to try to convince somebody else the sky is green or try to convince myself the sky is green. All I have to do is look at the preponderance of the evidence. If you have evidence, present it to me. I'll check it out.
Mark, okay, two things.
See what I'm.
One,
That's all I'm getting at.
okay, two things. One, the sky is green situation, as an example that you gave, and you gave a simple example
Hmm.
to put forth your thing. I understand that.
Hmm.
I understand that you gave the example, and I understand that you're going to know
Hmm.
what I'm going to bring up, but I'm going to bring it up now. Um, in the case of a green sky, and this and that, it's 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 one thing, but when before you is put a maze with pathways that lead into reference points that leads into a number of things that scatter, that it's really, instead of a one-off concept type thing, it's a puzzle put before you. And you say, well, no, that's wrong. um, in the case that you would, because here's what I believe: you're blowing smoke up your butt and the other person, because if it's a complicated thing like that, because if you're not willing to look at that complicated
No,
SketchUp.
I never said that. I
No,
said you
put,
have to look at that
put,
complicated sketch.
but put your, I'm using not you, just a general. So put yourself to the side. Off the concept is what I'm trying to get at. If there's that a dashboard of crap in front of you that they're putting forth against you, in order to even negate a person's, that number one, you'd have to be willing to go down that road. But that aside, it could be something to do with any number of things. You have to know the material.
Yeah, yes, and I said that's why I said you have to study that stuff.
But in the process of knowing that material, all that steel manning is being able to repeat their material to them. But a consequence of doing that, of knowing the material, is that if you do have screwed up things that you think, by studying it, you're going to realize that, oh, well, wait a second, this is screwed up.
But that's okay too.
Right.
But that's okay too, because that's how people grow. I mean, and you've heard me say that a million times in our discussions back, present your evidence. Maybe you'll change my mind. My mind has been changed about any number of things.
Well, steel manning is that.
Because simply put, I didn't have all the information, or I had dodgy information, or I had old information that was changed. That happens all the time.
But steel manning is that.
Okay.
That's all it is.
Okay. The way you were talking about it, it was as if I had to try to make this person's case in order to examine my information. And I don't think I need to go that far. Maybe on something I do. I don't know. I haven't come across that situation yet.
If you can make the person's case where you detail it like solid, where they say, well, hell, Mark, yeah, that's exactly what I believe to a T. If you can do that, it implies that you've. I mean, sure, you can put your brain on record and then just like
regurgitate. Yes,
regurgitate. But
millions of students do it every day in classrooms all over the world.
So they do, but the tricky thing is, if you do even just put it on record and you can offer it back to them, some notions that you offer back, even if you think that you're solid on it, there could be the potential for, by you doing that, saying, oh wait, that contradicts my belief, and I see where a problem is here. So
and then you have to re-examine. Yeah,
right. So steel. I just brought 2 points that it's regurgitating back to them, and 2, it shows that you understand the material that they think is right, and number 2, it shows that, well, you have the dignity and sincerity. I don't know if dignity is, or the
honesty.
I don't know what the word. Yeah, there's a word for it. The
integrity.
Yeah, it's in that ballpark. There's a word for it, but I don't know the yeah, the
intellectual honesty, intestinal fortitude.
Yeah, so that one, the intellectual honesty, to be able to do that.
Yeah, you have to. You have to.
The compromise, or not the compromise, but the residual effect is that you could run into a situation where you're like, oh crap, so this thought that I've had is not necessarily where it should be. So I just,
you got to be prepared for that. You have to be. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what you know. I don't care what you think you know. I don't care who you are. You have to be prepared for at least the concept that you could just maybe possibly be wrong,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I know that's a hard pill for a lot of people to swallow, but we're all wrong.
A lot. We're more wrong than we're right.
Well, yeah, I'd say it's, but then again, at the end of the day, they are opinions. And my opinions probably won't have really any effect on your day to day life because they're simply that they're opinions.
No, that's not true.
Sure.
That's absolutely no. Well,
Well, I said may or may not have any kind of an effect on your daily life because it's
no, but
just an opinion.
that's well, from my experience, that's not true. Any encounter that I have with people, there's a falling off. Like there's
Well,
depending on
that's
the
why I said
subject.
may or may not.
Yeah, dude, you're stuck on the yes. I agree with you. But
Okay.
I'm saying that anything that comes my way, depending on the grade, um,
Hmm.
I do, if it's worth examining,
Hmm. Right.
I examine it because um because maybe there's something there for me to, but
Hmm.
that's my personal
Yeah.
choice to do.
And we're saying the same thing, you know.
Yeah, you could also go the route, just to wrap it up and whatever you have to. We
Yeah.
could also go the route of what someone said. I think it was somebody out there said, "Innocence is bliss" or something, or ignorance
Let
is.
me go back and find it. Ignorance is bliss. Yes. That was Greg. Oh man. There it is. Ignorance is bliss because what you don't know it affects you.
Okay, so if you don't know, well, hell,
Yeah.
if you don't know, you know, I mean, it's like what that's it. That's the end of the story right there. And is there happiness in that? I think that ties in with everything we were talking about in a general sense.
Yeah. Overall happiness, I think, and overall quality of life and satisfaction plays a
Right.
lot into it. Because, and we get back to the 10% who would never leave the dome because they are satisfied with what they got. Why do I need to go out there?
See, exactly. But but this is how things happen. So
Hmm.
you, I never got around to asking you, and we're not going to go down that route, but I am going to mention it
Yeah.
to you just so that you know, just so you know,
Hmm.
just so you know, because so
Okay.
you said a lot of things, and I've said a lot of things, but I never question you on the, because I'm curious as to how, and I think
Hmm.
that how did you arrive at the 10%? How did you arrive? Because I'm not so sure.
Because I think that there is a small percentage that would be satisfied with what they've got, but I think the overwhelming majority would want to go explore, would want to go out there, would want to be out with people who weren't employees, 10% was an arbitrary number. I pulled it out of
Okay,
thin air. It
okay,
could just as easily have been 15 or 20, but
but you're on the lower.
I don't know that it would be I don't think it would be 25%. I don't think 1/4 of the population would want that. They might, looking at it in the abstract, they might think they would, but it's like pick your favorite food. Okay. Now that's all you can have for the rest of your life. How sick of it would you get by the end of the first month? You know, you would want something else just for the variety.
Okay.
But other people would be more than happy to just have nothing but their favorite food, 3 meals a day for the rest of their lives.
I haven't thought, just to be fair, I
Mhm,
was taken by that notion of a 10%, and I was like,
mhm,
well, wait a second. So, just to be fair, on my
mhm.
instinctual thing,
Yeah, what do you think it would be?
but see, that's the thing. I don't know that this is true, just like yourself,
Well, no.
but my tendency
Mhm.
is to freaking pump that no. Because I
You
see
think it
people.
would be more?
Yeah, because I see people. Okay, so for instance, I know this is not the be all end all, but for
Hmm.
instance, we could take you and I for we have a system,
Hmm.
you and I do, where we set up the in such a we do if you nobody tells each other. We may have said it once.
Hmm.
You don't tell me and I don't tell you, but we have a system that we end up more or less. I'm the more belligerent one that sometimes I screw things up, but you're more like uncourse. But then again, all my shit's falling apart here. So like everything, I've got duct tape on everything, so it's like excuse you me. But we follow certain rules, or not rules, but or patterns
Hmm.
because we are creatures of habit. So,
Sure.
okay, I know by this time, and Eloy, by this time, what's going on with Eloy now, and so, and he should have posted this, or I should have done that, and you, and this and that, and even though we don't discuss it, we already got in this little cycle where we do things.
Sure.
And so that's why I would pump as using that as an example. That's why I would pump up the number because people want the
Well,
safety, and just like the guy eating the steak, he
hmm
wants that
it
uh,
that security, that feeling.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. To be fair, I didn't think of it in those terms about being creatures of habit. But then again, you look at the number of people who travel to other countries every year, even if it's just for a couple of weeks. They do that to get out of that habit.
He
We
couldn't
take
go
a
to Fiji.
we take a vacation to get out of the habit. We go camping to get out of the habit.
Mhm.
We go camping not because we have to. Who would want to give up a nice, comfy, air conditioned house to go sleep in a tent on the ground for a week and cook over a fire when I've got this bright, shiny stove in here in the kitchen? Millions of people do it every day, every weekend. The campgrounds are full. I mean, we don't have to go fishing to eat fish. We can go get fish right now at the grocery store or zip on down to the local fast food joint and get a filet o fish. But people like to break out of that habit every once in a while. And so I don't know, you think the percentage would be higher?
Yeah.
I don't know about that. I don't know. It's a difference of opinion. And maybe I did lowball it, but I don't think uh, having the knowledge that their entire life has been a lie since birth, and that there's a door they can go through to escape that lie, be it good, bad, or indifferent out there. I think most people would want to escape that lie.
I can't speak for most people, but I can tell you my leaning is that most people absolutely in my reckoning, according to my whatever,
Hmm.
most people, because I see examples of it
Well,
all across the board on so many things. Now here's the thing. All the while,
hmm
all the while, I'm also a part of that situation. Linda said that think about there's been many great migrations over the millennia, um, and people have left their comfort zones and moved into the great beyond. And
yeah,
so, but here's the thing about that: they left. So the people in Europe,
for many reasons.
yeah, okay, but the people in Europe mainly
Hmm.
for many reasons, but mainly was for a better life.
Yeah,
Not they didn't leave the comfort of their homes because they had it good. A lot of people left because
right.
yeah, I mean that's why people left either because they were oppressed due to religious
Okay.
intolerance or because they had bad food yieldings or governmental for instance in Spain the taxation became so outrageous so they would move to the Americas, but when they arrived in the Americas, since they were so far away, they still had taxes because Spain controlled the Americas, but they found that they could easily not the delay in time plus the distance. So people had, they.
True.
I don't know that they moved for exploration's sake.
Well, I'm the direct descendant of people who came out west in the Great Migrations from Missouri. They left the United States to come out to the territories. And they left their comfort zones. They had lives. They had careers. They had ranches. They had farms. He'd be 5 times great grandfather was a tanner. I mean, he worked with leather. He made saddles
But
and
wait a second.
bridles and everything for horses.
But wait a
And
second. What
they
did they?
packed everything up and came out west.
But what? Were they? Because if I recall, so was this in the 1800s?
Yeah.
Mid late
Yeah.
1800s. I recall, and you'll tell me, but were they offered anything, land,
No,
acreage?
they could file a land patent out in the Oregon Territory,
Okay.
but they left the United States. It was a territory, and in fact, this area up here at that time, it was when my ancestors came. It was the Oregon Territory. Cousins came out in 1843 as on the first migration out west, when it was still disputed between U.S. and Great Britain. So Hudson's Bay Company was involved, and Great Britain had this land and that land and the other land, and America wanted it all, and I mean all that.
So why did they go? For the adventure of it? No, they went for a better life. No,
To make a better life,
okay.
to make a better life, to try to establish a better life for themselves.
Right. So,
but
look,
they weren't living a bad life to begin with. They just saw that as maybe something more.
Okay, so there's all sorts of options. There are people that are naturally adventurous in this and that. But all I'm getting at is that in the great flux of things, people don't get up when people, their go-to thing is not to get up and go across history because they just want a change of scenery for the heck of it or for the adventure of it. They leave in a I would comfortably say, because where they're at just ain't getting it. They need to find a way to supplement their families, their lives, their religion, whatever the case. That's the history in a general sense.
Well, I can only speak for my ancestors. My ancestors sold houses, they sold property, they sold cattle, they sold everything they had because they thought they could make a better life out here where it was more open and free, where there were fewer people, where there was less competition. And I don't know, maybe they were fed some BS story about, oh, you could just walk down the street picking up gold nuggets off of the ground. Maybe there was something of that, but they didn't come out to work gold fields. They were too old for that. But the point remains is they thought they could make a better life out here than what they had. But that doesn't mean that they lived a bad life, because they didn't. They had a lot of acreage. They had a lot of cattle. They were doing quite well for their place and that time.
Yeah. So it's true.
But again, people migrate for various reasons. There's economic, religious, security, persecution, oppression. There's all kinds of reasons. People move for
humans across time, it is true, have moved. I'm just emphasizing that a great deal of that movement is, well, for many of the reasons you just put forth. But the idea in conjunction with leaving the safety of Truman's world for the outside world, where now the responsibility lays on his head. If given that opportunity, I question that lower percentage. You said up to 20. I question a little bit due to the reason that I said. So, like, if these people in Europe were happy where they were at, and
they probably wouldn't have. Yeah, they probably wouldn't have come.
That's my first go-to thought. I don't know that even like the only guy This is the only guy that we know of. Well, maybe I don't want to push Leif Erikson too much because that's the new replacement of. But the only guy that I can think of properly, because he had a crazy notion in his head, was Columbus to get up and go. Magellan also was another crazy, but to get up and go.
Well, all of those explorers,
without knowing what's ahead, because after the fact, it was still dangerous, but they knew that at least there was something over, and they were, commissioned to do so. But
look at his contemporaries, Vespucci and all the rest of them. Yeah, but they were explorers. They had a mission, and that's what they did.
The Italians, they left and came to the Americas because it was a nightmare over there, food wise, economic wise.
Well, the Irish,
the Greeks, the same. The Irish, the same.
Scots, yeah.
The Spanish, the same.
Yeah.
They all hauled butt because it's like.
And their government said, good, get out of here. Well, we need to land the plane. It's been 2.5 hours, man.
Well, let's just read off these final things.
Okay, that was Jim Dockrell. Why did Lewis and Clark go stumbling around the jungles of Africa? Oh, I got that history wrong. Lewis and Clark explored America. Yeah, they did. It was Livingstone in Africa. And why? Because it was there. Why did Hillary leave his estate in England to climb a mountain? Because it was there.
Oh, okay. So because it was there. Yeah, if you're wealthy, I would assume that last guy, Hillary, was somewhat
Edmund Hillary.
Wealthy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you have leisure time and you don't have to you have to go hunt 10 oxes a day to feed your 12 or your 20 children. Of course you have leisure time to paint, the Eiffel Tower or whatever the hell. So it's like, yeah, we're all kind of in the ballpark. We're saying the same things roughly. We're just looking at the different points of views and stuff.
Yeah.
Time to land the plane.
And again, people are people. They're going to do what they want. And some are very much creatures of habit. I mean, people who have never left their neighborhood. When we were stationed in Hawaii, we met people up on the North Shore of Oahu that had never been to Honolulu. And these are people in their 30s and 40s that had never been to Honolulu. And it was like 20 miles. Never gone, never had a reason to. They were more than happy to never go see it. Some people are just fine. If you're warm and comfy in a pile of crap, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, but now it's even with the internet. But let's not go down that thing.
Yeah, we got to land it.
All right, landing plane now. Guys, thank you for hanging out with us. Well, we had an enjoyable conversation of a little bit of this and that. And
not bad for a couple of guys who didn't know what they were going to talk about when they pushed the button.
We had no freaking. We had no idea. In any event, we go live every Tuesday at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific Coast time here on the Trampled Underfoot podcast show on YouTube. We also have a site over on Facebook called Trampled Underfoot Podcast on Facebook, and we usually post certain items, videos, and photos or links concerning the topics we talk about here and there. So be sure to visit that. And we also have a website, trampledunderfootpodcast.com. You can catch our past episodes by pressing the Wayback Machine button. And we're also featured on Apple and all the other streaming services. So you'll find
Spotify and all them fun stuff, Amazon, all those fun podcast platforms.
That's right. And we're also sponsored by
Harneal Media, your web solution, your web source. If you're thinking about a web presence, there's no better way to do it than to get yourself a website. And the first person I would recommend you talk to would be Steve over at Harneal Media. He's a sponsor of TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com, and he puts up with our tomfoolery because he's just a good guy, and that's all there is to it. And remember, when you're dealing with Harneal Media, you're dealing with Steve, not some nameless, faceless person that you're never going to talk to again at some call center, God knows where. you're going to work with Steve. And Steve's going to work his tail off to get you set up and keep you running smoothly. So check him out. That's Harneal Media, HARNEAL, media.com, sponsor of TrampledUnderfootPodcast.com.
All right. Well, we thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll catch you here next Tuesday. Be safe. Enjoy yourselves. Peace.
See ya. Have the week you deserve.